Good evening. I'm Charles Duffy, and this is Political Pulse. Tonight we have a special guest, Chris Matthews from MSNBC's Hardball. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
I read some of your books to prepare, and there's one book that you wrote. On the back cover is a picture of your mom and you and your two brothers at the Lincoln Memorial. I think it was 1954.
50 years ago.
Do you remember it?
Sure. Well, I think I remember fleeting bits of coming down to Washington for 3 days with my brothers and just to sightsee. We went to the old, went to Mount Vernon, went up the Washington Monument.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time at the old Smithsonian, which was different then because before they got so special about it and started being selective in their archives, they used to have like every bicycle. Like there'd be like 1,000 bicycles.
Right.
There'd be all train engines, and there was a lot of everything in the old castle and in the 1876 exhibit room. It's a great old thing, a great thing to visit as a kid.
And I guess it was back in the old building. But you know what was amazing about that picture was, I guess your mother had dressed you guys up in a suit and a tie. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, well we were formal.
Kids today.
We're a Catholic school.
Oh yeah?
We're Catholic school kids, so we dressed up at school every day. We had a uniform on every day at school. That wasn't too surprising for us.
Right.
But I mean, you're right, today everybody dresses like they're in a race.
Yeah.
They're wearing running clothes.
Oh yeah,
they go on airplane trips today and they dress like in running clothes.
Oh God! Well, you never see kids down on the mall at the Lincoln Memorial with a suit and tie on.
Yeah, man, I never thought of that, but you're right. We were pretty formal,
Yeah.
pretty traditional family.
But a lot of your books, or a couple of your books, you talk about hope and you're very positive on America. And I just wanted to read a quote by, this name's going to bring back some memories, but you called this the best rendition of what you see as the unique American attitude. And the fellow's name was Sergeant Leroy Taylor, who you work with.
Right.
And the quote was, Chris, he said, Chris, the little man loves the country because it's all he got.
All he's got, yeah.
Do you remember
because,
that?
I was working as a Capitol policeman back in 1971 for 3 months, I think it was, and I was working, it's the first job I could get coming back from the Peace Corps in Africa, and I worked during the day with a senator, Senator Frank Moss from Utah, and then I would work starting at 3 till 11 as on that detail, the U.S. Capitol Police. I was armed, I had a uniform and everything. And so I lived 2 lives sort of thing, and took the 33 bus or whatever it was to work in the morning and back in. My first Washington jobs. And I got to meet a lot of guys who were double dippers. They'd been military guys, enlisted men, maybe MPs, a lot of them. And they had gotten jobs on the Hill through patronage. It was the way you got it in those days, the way I got my job. And they came in, took long drives in from West Virginia, a lot of them, like Leroy Taylor. Interesting guy. He, you know, I guess somebody might call him a blue-collar intellectual, a thoughtful guy, but yet he enjoyed being a cop. He used to say, I'm going to bring them smoke. He'd talk about smoke. he's gonna firepower was big with Leroy. But he...
but how'd that comment kind of stay with you?
Well, we were talking about, you know, he would like advise. I'm a college kid, you know, at the time, and he thought I needed some street learning.
Yeah.
So he would say, you know, Chris, you know why the little man fights for his country? Why he loves his country? Because it's all he's got. And you think about a guy who's got maybe $100 in the bank at the most, country guy back in those days, military background, had been in maybe a lifer, maybe in 20 years or so, maybe drawing a pension, but basically a guy who really only has his country. He doesn't have a big house somewhere. He doesn't have a big, you know, attractive family. He doesn't have any kind of glamour in his life. He has just enough to make it on. And that guy, if you think about it, what does he really have? And he has a country worth dying for. And whereas the wealthy guy with all his complicated business affairs and glamorous lifestyle gets caught up in a lot of that. And he says, I got a lot of things going for me. Yeah, I'm American, but I got a lot of things going for me. The little guy has America going for him. And that's what he fights for.
Interesting.
I thought it was a fascinating insight into the American character.
And it kind of stayed with you.
Well, yeah, I wanted to stay with me.
Yeah.
And I think I spent a lot of time at Camp Pendleton. I know a lot of time. I spent last week there. It seemed like a lot of time. It was a day, and interviewing enlisted guys. And what I found before I went, they told me when I went to see them, don't ask these guys personal questions. Don't ask them about their feelings or their outlook on the world. They do not want to answer those questions. Ask them about their unit. Ask them about teamwork. Ask them about their job and their training and the environment they're going to be fighting in. That's what they want to talk about. And that's my wife, Kathleen Matthews, on Channel 7, she said, you know, that's why when you understand how these guys have been trained and women have been trained, that's when you have to be really questioning and skeptical about the need for any war. Because if you've taken a man or a woman at the young age of 18 and made them into a fighting person, a part of a unit, where they don't even think about themselves and know they're going to lose both legs or get disfigured or some horrible injury. And I've seen a bunch of them, Walter Reed. If you make a person into that as a fighting force, you better be real careful how you use them because they're not thinking about themselves. They're just going to go out there and do what you tell them to do. So you got to be real careful about how many wars we get into and how many commitments we make.
In other parts of your books, you talk about the American public as a whole. And I know one comment you made is that, the American public, a lot of the people like candidates who have sun on their face, like a person who's active.
Absolutely.
A lot of people
so
don't
superficial. It seems so non-intellectual. But I challenge anybody to see where we've broken that rule. The American people look at the candidates for president. There's two of them. They're men. They're men, middle-aged men. Every time it's the same deal. Who seems like the outdoor guy? Who seems like the guy who's just come in from outdoors somewhere? Who seems like a guy, when you close your eyes, you can see them in the outdoors, the sun in their face. And whether it's Ike or it's Harry Truman or it's Jack Kennedy or it's Bill Clinton when he first came to town or George W. Bush, I don't care if they were born rich, born poor, Democrat or Republican, the indoor guy, the guy with the blue suit on. It's Bob Dole, right? It's Michael Dukakis. It's
in '68 you had two guys with no sun.
The trouble was there was no Nixon and Humphrey were a problem. Yeah. But absolutely, the Adlai Stevensons, the Tom Deweys, it's so predictable that the bureaucrat, the desk jockey, gets his butt handed to him, and the guy who looks like he may not be intellectual, but he seems like he's worked with his hands. He seems like he's from out in the country. I don't care if it's a wealthy kid like George W. Bush or it's a poor kid like Jimmy Carter. When you come in out of the sun, there's something about the American character that's still cowboy. We are, if you said the Brits are still royal, we're still cowboy. And it's a great thing about us because even as modern as we get with all these toys and modern things we have, we're still disrespectful and suspicious of the city guy, and we like the cowboy. Now, that'd be interesting if we get Rudy Giuliani running, the ultimate city guy running against a Bill Frist or a Hillary running, and I think she's going to run against a John Edwards. But I'll tell you, keep your eye on John Edwards because he fits the bill, and he's running.
Oh, yeah?
And he may have lost last time. Watch John Edwards from North Carolina.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned that your dad was the hardest working guy that you ever knew. What kind of influence did he have on your life, Chris?
Well, he was the guy in court who would write down what happened in court.
He was a court reporter.
Yeah, and of course in Philadelphia, big city, like the cases are messy. They're domestic relations, they're juvenile, they're criminal, they're terrible cases. And all day long he's exposed to that. And all day long he's writing down what's going on verbatim, then going home and dictating it into a machine. And then either my mom or a woman who worked for him would type it, to get the record perfect. And he worked till 10 o'clock every night, starting at very early in the morning. He would never quit before 10, ever. Sometimes he'd go past 10. And then he'd go in and watch something like Perry Mason. He loved Perry Mason.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes he'd practice on his dictative, whatever, that machine, when we're watching Perry Mason. But he'd watch the news, he'd watch the Johnny Carson monologue, go to sleep, and get up, work all day, and work like from 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock every night, every day, all the time. And then when he wasn't working out, his weekend time off, if he wasn't playing golf or playing cards with his Knights of Columbus buddies, he would be getting up and building, bricklaying and building additions to the house and porches. And his idea of a spare time was bricklaying.
Oh, jeez.
Well, just like Winston Churchill,
Yeah, but so you're still partial to people who get up early with the alarm to catch the bus. People who are sweating to send their kids to college. People who do their own taxes.
People make comments, racist comments and stuff about people. Just get up and watch at 6 o'clock in the morning and see who's catching the bus. It's the African Americans catching that early bus. Just give an example of a working class crowd, D.C. They get up early and they're catching the bus early and they're working hard all day. So, these stupid things about who's working and who's not, who's on welfare, is just BS. I mean, the people are working, so many. And I think that those people got to be looked at. Not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur in this country. This idea we're all going to be, like Bush pushes this, we're all going to be investing in the stock market, we're all going to be business types. And very few groups, by the way, are business oriented. They're just worker oriented. They come to this country, they get a job, they get another job, their kids get a job, they work. That's what they do. They get jobs. They don't start businesses. Now, some people come to this country, Koreans, for example, or Vietnamese, they come with that mercantile background. They're here, they own cleaners within a couple of years. But not everybody's like that. Americans aren't all, guys who can run business or women who can run business. So I think you got to respect the person who works. And that's something that of the two parties, the Democratic Party's really betrayed them. All they talk about is abortion or Israel or trial lawyers or that stuff. They never talk about the working person anymore. And it's just become constituency politics, you know?
And I know you worked on the Hill, but really for instance, your appreciation for working people really has an influence on your views on TV.
Yeah.
I mean, even though you worked on the Hill for one side or the other.
15
on the Hill.
years.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm pretty much, you know, I grew up in a Republican family. I worked for Democrats, but I've always been pretty damn independent. I mean, I am very independent by nature. I'm not fair and balanced because I try to be. I just am. Because I'm just having worked in politics, I'm very skeptical of what they say. I know it's all, a lot of it's just for political gain. And they get up in the morning and a staff person writes them something clever and witty and puckish. And then they get on television and say it. And seems like a clever line, as if regular people regularly think of clever lines. No, they got a guy sitting down there. Bill Clinton never made up a joke in his life, but he had a bunch of joke writers.
Tip O'Neill was a clever guy.
I liked working for him. He had a couple
You
one-liners.
worked for him 6 years.
It took me a long time to figure out his way of talking, and I guess it took a while for him to get used to me. But I think it was a wonderful relationship to work for a guy as big as him. You know, I think, look at the heavyweights we grew up with. I mean, I grew up with Humphrey and Nixon and Johnson and Kennedy. And real big guys, heavyweights. And today, the leaders today don't seem very big to me. I mean, Bush may turn out to be a very successful president. I don't know yet. It's still
Maybe
a big question
you were
mark.
younger back
it's a big
then.
question mark, Bush. I don't get it yet. I don't get it yet.
But Tip
You think I was younger than they were, but I think they were bigger.
Yeah.
I don't think they were just bigger compared to me because I was a kid. I think they were bigger.
Well, there was one time you were in the Speaker's office, I read, and who comes in, it was after 6 p.m., maybe he was getting ready for the State of the Union, but Ronald Reagan. So here you were, Chris Matthews working for Tip O'Neill, you got Tip O'Neill there, Ronald Reagan, and what was the comment?
Well, here's the story. I had the big ceremony. I was AA to the Speaker. Administrator says, I had this big desk, right? Oh. I didn't have much power, but I had a big desk and a big title and a big salary. And boss, and we had a lot. There's Kirk O'Donnell, the late, he died a couple years ago, the council, and Ari Weiss, who was head of the policy committee, and Jack Lew, who succeeded him. There's 3 or 4 staff people that really had great job. They were a great team. But I was sitting at this big desk in the Speaker's lobby, right off the floor of the House, and the holding room for the President of the United States when he gets the State of the Union tomorrow night, or I should say some night in January, February, is different every year. The President of the United States goes to give the Hill, but he has to go early because they have the dogs sniff and everything to look for bombs. So he comes very early, and they put him in what's called a holding room. Well, the holding room is the Speaker's office, so the Speaker's room. So I'm the host. It's so funny because Tip was the opposition leader.
Right.
And I walk in there to the president. It was like 1982, my first day of the Union. I went and I walked in, and I don't know why I said this, but I said, Mr. President, welcome to the room where we plot against you. And he said, oh, no. The Speaker says not after 6. He said that in Washington we're all friends after 6.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, he really did say that.
But just Chris Matthews, you're young guy back then. You're in the room with the Speaker and the President. Did it kind of strike you? I mean, since then you've seen a lot of people, but looking back, isn't that kind of a big moment?
Oh yeah, I mean, working with Tip O'Neill was always a big moment. For 6 years, every single day is this guy. I first meet him in the morning, you know, and he would say, "What do you hear? Anything I should know? Anything special?"
How about that?
And he would likely be a vacuum cleaner because he would be up late playing cards, relaxing over the weekend. But he went up in Massachusetts. He just wanted to know everything. Who was conniving against him in the cloakroom? What were the Republicans up to? What was Reagan up to? He didn't watch the Sunday shows. So he wanted to know who was on. Meeting Reagan was pretty impressive because Reagan wasn't the Reagan I expected. I expected Jimmy Stewart.
Let me stop you there. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Chris Matthews of MSNBC's Hardball. Chris, you were talking about Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
And what were you?
Well, it's funny because he was not the guy you think you're going to meet. I mean, we'd all been led to believe that Ronald Reagan was a debonair, easygoing guy like Jimmy Stewart, the actor. Much more like Jimmy Cagney, tough, on guard. When you met him, even though he had that nice line about we're all friends after 6, very much a guy who's like an animal in the jungle, very much aware of you. Of course, he knew who I was. He knew where he was, where he was. So he had reason to believe that he was among the opposition, but if not the enemy. But I was amazed at how tough he was. And that explains a lot because people that make it to the top like he did and survived all those years of divorce, you know, being divorced by his wife, who basically dumped him, you know, Jane Wyman,
Right.
and going through with movie career sort of fizzling out, having been up there among the big guys and seeing that fizzle out, seeing the TV career fizzle out, show business, he was doing reviews in Vegas, everything tough on him. He had a very tough life. It wasn't all handed. That's where Tip was wrong about it. Tip thought he had everything handed to him because of his screen test and being good looking.
Tip was hard on him, though.
He was
Tip,
very tough on him, very
in
tough
his
on
book,
him.
he was
And
very
tough, and he just thought Reagan came from being good looking and having it handed to him and forgetting where he came from. And I think that was just not the full story at all.
You know, and Tip had interaction with other presidents, and I read Tip's book, and I think it was after the World War II, and he was in Boston, and he was walking down the street, and he met JFK, and he described JFK as this pasty, skinny guy. This was like 1945, and you know, who would have known 14 years later he'd be the president of the United States.
Kennedy was so physically unfit in the 40s because of the disease he had, you know, Addison's disease,
Right.
and he almost died of it 2 or 3 times. He had last rites, and the Kennedys always covered that up, obviously. That he was shorter than Nixon in the pictures I got in a book, the book I wrote about that you mentioned. He's shorter than Nixon in 47 and taller than him in 60. That must have been very unnerving to Nixon to see a guy in his later years of life just get taller than you, because he got fixed up.
Right.
He had all that cortisone, and of course we're learning all about those things now, what people are taking.
But when
taking the shots, and all the baseball players and all taking them, what drugs do to you in the long run. They're very bad for you in the long run. But Kennedy was doing it in a short enough period of time, 10 or so years, that didn't hurt him.
And in your book, you went into that, and you know, I think you had a chapter on the whole Camelot and how that was really Jackie Kennedy's kind of invention.
Yeah, it was.
Really,
Post-mortem.
Yeah.
She made that up when she talked to Theodore White. The term Camelot had never been used in describing the Kennedy administration when he was alive. We call it the New Frontier. That term Camelot was so successfully implanted in people's heads that even people listening now say, oh, that wasn't true. We called it Camelot at the time. And I challenge anybody, go to the library, go to any magazine or newspaper, any transcript from a TV or radio show back before November 22nd, 63, never, ever used, not once.
And I think, as you pointed out in your book, it was kind of unfair to him because deep down, you know, he was a very tough, steely guy. I mean, he had the Cuban Missile Crisis.
He's a cold warrior.
Yeah, and
he's not some guy putting flowers in the end of guns.
Yeah.
He was a guy with a gun. He was a guy who fought in the war, anti-communist all the way, hated communism, very much the tough guy. But he was smart. He was a smart cold warrior who was still trying to figure it out at the end. You know, he's for the Test Ban Treaty, and he put troops in Vietnam, but he had no idea what to do with them. He was very much stuck over there, and he hadn't given enough thought. And who knows what would have happened if he had stayed in as president. The last speech he gave the day he died at Fort Worth, it's in the presidential papers, where he said, if we leave Vietnam, that government falls tomorrow morning. He knew that we had to stay there. Just like Bush knows today we have to stay in Iraq. He was a cold warrior. And all the old liberals like Oliver Stone saying, oh, he would have pulled out. No. He was fighting to the end.
Interesting. And we talk about destiny. I know you think a lot about the country, but I think about, you know, what would happen if Lincoln would have lost that election in 1860, or lost even the second election? I mean, what would
there
happen?
Wouldn't have been a secession.
There
would not have been a secession. The southern states saw in the election of Lincoln the end of the game for them, because they knew that once the country began to include new states, that all the new states would be coming in as free states. And eventually they would have enough votes to change the Constitution and outlaw slavery. And they saw it, and they were getting squeezed, and they decided to make their move. And they seceded. And maybe Virginia wouldn't have gone if the other states hadn't gone first, but the Confederacy held together. And it was fear of Lincoln. But remember that great notion or picture of Lincoln coming and staying at the Willard, snuck into town.
Before he got sworn in.
And he had to sneak in through Baltimore.
Right.
And then being president, looking across the Potomac and seeing the Confederate flags flying.
Incredible.
I mean, even today it's interesting. Maryland is a blue state, and Virginia is a red state. So some things haven't changed. I mean, Virginia, you go to Alexandria and hang out in Old Town, you're in a red state.
Yeah.
When you go to where my wife works at Channel 7, you're in Arlington, Roslyn, you're in a red state, which is a very interesting environment compared to Washington or Maryland.
Yeah, and that book, Nixon and Kennedy, of course, the other person is Nixon, and you're empathetic towards Nixon. And I read the book One of Us by Tom Wicker, and I think he is kind of like one of everybody. I mean, he was flawed. He had different flaws than the rest of us. But
He got caught.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do the same thing. He didn't get caught. He got caught up in it. He kept trying to say, Remember those lines in the tapes? They play it tough, we'll play it tough. It was all trying to catch up to the Kennedy way of doing things. They're very tough Kennedys. They benefited from not talking about things like they were never honest about the president's health. They would never give you the straight answer about his health condition. A lot of the times politicians watch the other guy and say, if he can get away with it, I can. But I always remind my kids at school, there's some kids in school that always get caught, and there's some kids who never get caught. And it's not the good guys and the bad guys. It's not that. It's who gets caught and who doesn't. And Nixon is the kind of guy that gets caught.
Yeah. Well, he always thought the 1960 election was stolen from him. So when he was president, he was going to make because sure.
The first thing happened when Nixon ran for office is they had the Republicans snuck into their office and stole all their literature. And Pat had spent the $3,000 legacy she had gotten from a relative in a will. All that money on that literature, and all of it was stolen out of a break-in at their headquarters. And a lot of things that happened to Nixon, you know, Lee Harvey Oswald tried to go after Nixon when he was in Texas once to kill him. His wife stopped him. It turned out to be Johnson was in town. He got it wrong. But there's so many of these weird comparisons.
Well, you mentioned LBJ, and there's a line that I think you used in one of your book, and it was from Great Gatsby. He said, the very rich are different from you and me, and then you added, so are the very political. And LBJ was a very political guy. I mean, he wasn't a great public speaker, but up close, I mean, he was good.
Well, you know where we do Hardball from every night, from the Hall of the States, right near the Capitol, on North Capitol Street. That building, I can remember. I've been around Washington long enough to remember what was there before. It was the Dodge Hotel. It was right on that spot. And the Dodge Hotel went down by the wrecking ball back in the early 70s. But when I was a cop, we would go down there, and that way you could always get a full meal at the Dodge Hotel, a full meal for $1. All the chicken you could eat, for example, fried chicken, because that was the most the crime in that area was brutal. There was the Capitol Police Station had X's for where people had been murdered on every corner back in those days, and it's still rough. But that hotel was where Johnson checked in back in the Great Depression as an aide to a secretary to a congressman from Texas, Kleagle. Not Kleagle, I'll think of his name in a minute. And he that night brushed his teeth like 7 or 8 times so he could go to the bathroom. It was a common bathroom with a hall full of AAs, of secretaries to senators and congressmen. He wanted to meet them all. Next morning he kept taking showers because he wanted to be in there so he could meet lots of guys. And within a couple months he was Speaker of the Little House. He was elected to the top staffer on the Hill to that organization. Johnson was an inveterate meter, greeter, get to know you, work you, know your weaknesses, and he knew everybody's weaknesses.
You ever listen to the tapes?
Oh yeah. I like it when he like ordered his pants and he wanted more room in his pants. And then he chintz the tailor by saying, you know, I'm on a salary now. He's president of the United States.
He's on a salary.
He's saying I'm on a salary and I need a little break, so give me a price. And he was unbelievable working the guy.
Yeah, how about the one where he called? He was down in Texas and he wanted uniforms for his ranch guys, and he called the local clothier. And he said, am I talking to the president? And he said, yeah, get over here. I want to see you. The president called about, you know, having clothes for his ranch guys.
I think it was amazing that he had the time, but he obviously had the inclination to save $1. And that's probably, he was a retailer. He's like a guy in politics always retailing. He's never... He can't do TV speeches. No, he's totally incredible when he used to say, my fellow Americans. Nobody believed him. He used to look through those granny glasses. But when he's in the room with you, working you know, he was powerful. Senators would try to avoid him in the hallway before a vote because they're afraid he'd get to them.
You know, one thing about Nixon, I don't know if you knew this. Do you know Nixon argued a case before the U.S. Supreme Court in 1966? That was, you know, 2 years before he was. I know. It's kind of interesting that a future president.
I think Len Garment was his law partner back then. Yeah,
he was.
Yeah, he was with that firm, and he was a real lawyer. Yeah. You know, I just think interesting thing. If you ever go to New York City, you walk up Fifth Avenue along the Park, where it's really beautiful. You know, the '60s, where all the beautiful hotels like the Pierre and the clubs like the Knickerbocker and all. Nixon had an apartment up there after he lost the presidency to Kennedy and lost the governorship of California. He moved to New York. And he had a really good law practice. He was, you know, he was up there hanging around with Tom Dewey and all those guys and the big shots in New York. He'd walk in the morning, and he was an establishment figure, well-dressed, beautiful family. I mean, all those kids were out going to Chapin School, and they were on the, you know, they're living the upper-class life. He threw all that away to get back into politics in '67 and '68. And if Nixon had stayed out of politics, he would have left politics as a sort of an eminence. But he had to get back in the worst way. And he got back in, and Watergate came. He just had the bug.
Well, the only cure for running for president isn't it embalming fluid?
I know.
Mo Udall said that.
Well, and you know, Edwards will probably run. Kerry will run again. They've got this bug. You know, Gene McCarthy, he lives over in Q Street now, a former senator from Minnesota. I always thought he was a hero of mine because of the Vietnam War and his opposition to it. But he said it's easier to run for president than to stop. You know, he ran it about 3 times.
Do you see a little Gore, or do you see a little Nixon and Gore? In other words, taking 8 years off and running again. And again, he's not a guy with sun in his face. But if he goes up a guy like Frist, perhaps like 2 guys with not a lot of sun on their face, I mean, Gore could beat him.
Anybody can win next time.
Yeah.
The only one that I think would be very hard to beat if he were to win his party's nomination would be McCain. I think if McCain were nominated, he'd be awfully hard to beat for the Democrats. I think Giuliani would be hard to beat if he were nominated. The trick in both cases is to win the nomination. Whereas there's no Democrat I can think of who would be hard to beat. Hillary would be a good candidate for the nomination. In fact, may well be the front runner. But in the general election, just think about how tough it would be for her to win Iowa or even Pennsylvania. Tough. Traditional states would have a hard time with Hillary.
What's the most amazing thing you've seen in politics? And when I think about that, like when I saw Bob Livingston, the speaker-elect, say, I'm not going to stand for speaker, I had an affair, and then he called for Clinton's resignation. But have you
How about Newt?
Yeah.
Newt was having a little thing going on there when he was part of the war.
What's the most amazing thing you've seen? You've seen a lot of things.
Well, I guess George Bush winning the presidency after his father got booted from office. I mean, if you think about, if you were sitting around after Clinton was elected and somebody said the next president of the United States is going to be George Bush's son.
He wasn't even the governor then.
He had lost the House race.
Right.
Talk about a climb. And it isn't all because of the old man. The old man wasn't that popular.
No.
It was him.
No.
And winning the governorship, beating now I'm forgetting her name. What's her name?
Ann Richards.
Ann Richards. You know, that was a big upset.
Yeah. The silver spoon comment.
Oh, they're born with a silver foot in his mouth.
Yeah, sir.
But I think that was, if you think about it and you're fair about it, that's an amazing climb to power. Nixon coming back in '68 after being beaten. Nothing. I mean, I think. Let me tell you a surprise.
Beaten for governor.
I think I'll give you a surprise. At some point, Ike is going to be remembered positively. Dwight Eisenhower.
Okay.
And I think he may come back and people say, peace and prosperity kept us out of war. I think he might make a run. It's hard for a Republican to make it in history because the Democrats are all the historians. They write all the history.
We have about 10 seconds left. When's that duel between you and Zell Miller going to take place?
Well, he's the one that wanted it. All I can tell you is the whole time he was there, my producers and my president of my company were in my ear saying, calm down, let him do it. And he's going to write a book about it. I think it's funny because if you watch the thing, it wasn't a debate. He was just haranguing me, and I'm there going, and he said, I'm going to walk off this set. And then I said, oh, Senator, that would be our loss. That would be our loss. I had a lot of fun with that.
You were very calm.
Thank you.
Chris, thanks very much
Charles.
for coming. Chris Matthews, Hardball, also has a show on Channel 4 locally. So this is Charles Duffy, Political Pulse. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us.
Of steel, with incomparable courage, with fierce determination, with uncompromising resolve. They go, and wherever and whenever they go, the USO will be there to touch their spirit, to comfort them, to remind them, to simply and heartfully thank them for the extraordinary gift they give us all. Until every brow is soothed and every hand is held. Until every battle's won and every song is sung. Until everyone comes home.
I'm going to begin by just starting off by saying good afternoon. My name is Sheila Parker, and I am the first Vice President of the Montgomery County Commission for Women. Also, I'm the chair this year of the 2005 Women's Legislative Briefing Committee. I'd like to thank all of you that are here that were able